Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Altar of Stars. I'm very grateful that you found your way here. My name is Teagan West. I'm a ritualist, astrologer, drum maker, and ancestral lineage healing practitioner on Haudenosaunee land, so-called upstate New York. And my own ancestors come from Ireland, Syria, Lebanon, Sicily, and Anishinaabe territory in what is now known as Canada. And my ancestors are a big part of my work and the readings that I offer here. So they're a synthesis of astrology and divination, but also animism and land connectedness to form this kind of intersection of cultural repair through these ancestral knowledge systems. And so if you like what I share here, you can find my work over on SUBSTACK at the Altar of Stars, where there's a pretty big archive at this point of weekly astrology readings in the form of podcasts that I've been sharing for a couple years, as well as tarot spreads and different ancestral rituals for each of the Wheel of the Year holidays or the new and full moons every month. So find me over there if you're interested in going deeper. But yeah, I hope that you enjoy this reading, and if you ever desire to work together one-on-one, there's opportunities to do that. You can find the links for that in the show notes. But yeah, enjoy, take good care of yourselves, my friends. Thanks for being here. So this is where I want to leave it, because that's all the stuff that is happening this week, and I'll come back to the new moon, but something that's been on my mind a lot lately is this concept of right-sized dignity. And my friend Ashley first said that to me a few weeks ago, and it just really landed well. It's something that, being ruled by Mars and Leo myself, I struggle a lot with like pridefulness and shame and the dynamics that plays in my own psychology and self-concept, really. But I share that because this concept of right-sized dignity is like, pride will cause you to conflate yourself, and shame will cause you to deflate yourself. And neither of those things are actually being in center, being in like right, balanced relationship with the world around you. You're either inflating or deflating. You're either defensive or submissive, and like in self-pity, it's really intense. And it has so much to do with like self-esteem, and so I've been thinking a lot about, especially as Jupiter recently entered Leo and all of these new themes have come up, the concept of dignity as the kind of central point, right-sized dignity. To me, that's the space between pridefulness and shame, or perhaps it's its antidote, And it's like an inherent worthiness of being that doesn't need to prove itself. Letting that land. And I feel that is going to be a teaching and a medicine to carry in our pocket through this experience, because overwhelm and reactivity and confusion can actually lead us to act out of our dignity, like not from a place of right-sized dignity, but from shame or pride or reactivity. Because if we feel unsafe in any capacity, it's going to be a little bit harder to be in our dignity. It's going to like pull us out of it. And so this sense of inherent self-worth, like this worthiness of being that doesn't need to prove itself. It's like, I'm here, this is where I stand. I don't have to contort or convince or reach or leave myself to meet you. I'm in my like self-generating source of power. I don't need to get it from anywhere else, not from validation, not from striving, or conflating myself in pride, deflating myself in shame. I don't need to hide, but I also don't need to like make myself big to try to prove something. It's like, nope, I'm right here. All is well kind of vibe, There's a real power to that. Like that to me is true power. I think of elders in my life who inhabit that fulcrum, and there's nothing that can pull them because they're not identified with other people's stories. They're not interested in participating in other people's stories about who they are. And that's the trick with the dignity piece. It's like, as soon as we start to concern ourselves, right? Like the whole thing with the lion and like, a lion does not concern themselves with the opinions of sheep. I don't love the hierarchical undertone, but there is a sense of like, if I am concerning myself and then in getting myself involved in other people's stories, if I'm so worried about what other people think of me, I will so easily leave my center. I am no longer sourcing from that internal wellspring of inherent worthiness of being within. I am letting other people decide how worthy I am or am not. I'm giving my power away, right? And I begin to contort myself and actually live for the validation of others to tell me I'm good or tell me that I earned it, I'm worth something. And oftentimes the inflating that pride can create, or like compensating for insecurity, which are connected to each other, that pridefulness or even arrogance, it's like it is taking up more space to actually, in a way, in that moment, you're leaving your center to try to seek validation and to get even more feedback that you're good and what you're doing is worthy, and, you know, other people trying to lift you up. You're literally outsourcing your sense of worth to others, right? And so it's a really, and I think about the inverse with shame, where we feel the need to hide, where we don't have that inherent worthiness of being, and so we actually don't even feel worthy of existing. Certain parts of us get cut off completely. It's really tender. And I say this with the trepidation of like, that's some deep psychological work to be in. That's not going to happen overnight, you know? But for me, the daily reminder is like, what does it feel like in my body to inhabit right-sized dignity? My friend Asha shared such a beautiful practice the other day in Ancestor Circle of like, it comes from generative somatics is what they shared, where you like inhabit your width, you inhabit your depth, like above and below. You inhabit these different spectrums of being. And I guess it would be like height and width. And then the depth was actually sourcing that dignity from your lineage, from those at your back. And like claiming your space in this inherent worthiness of being that says like, I am here, I can take up the space that I take up, no more, no less. And I have the support of my people at my back. Here I am. Here I stay. And I'm not shook or pulled by other people's projections or stories. And, you know, that's not to say feedback isn't helpful, but it is to be very discerning about how much of that feedback is actually just projection. I've had to learn that the hard way so many times. I'll tell you this, the double whammy of being ruled by Mars and Leo, but that Mars is being ruled from the 12th house by a Libra sun is tricky. It's like, the dynamics of people pleasing and fawning is so intense, and it's so ancestral, it's so inherited, you know. So this practice, I'm so grateful to Asha for sharing that, like right-sized dignity. And not being moved by what's going on outside of me, still being open to feedback, but holding like the sovereignty of here I am. And the internal resource, right? I think that it's easier to leave our center when we don't feel resourced, to stay there. And there's maybe a little part of us, a younger self, that feels like the resource might be in the validation of others, in belonging to something outside of us. And this is where the beauty of like self-esteem comes into the Aquarius Leo axis, is that for me, Aquarius so much, it's so much about belonging to yourself first, before you seek belonging out in the world. that radical self-acceptance that is not dependent on other people's perception of you. That's the medicine right there of the Leo Aquarius axis. Some of the medicine. So anyhoodle, all that. And the new moon. This is where I'll end. So the new moon in Cancer occurs on Tuesday, July 14th at 5:43 a.m. Eastern Time. If you like a little dark moon magic, you could do something Sunday night, Monday night, especially since Sunday is the Kazemi. That might be a nice night to do a little something. But the beauty of this new moon, there's a double whammy, of course. We have the Kazemi afterglow, as I mentioned. And I think that that's my sense, unless you want to wake up early for like a new moon ritual in the wee hours of the morning, at sunrise, that could be beautiful. I sense there's something here. This is what I'll say about it. I sense there's something here about cleansing, about actually releasing the psychic baggage, like the let go or be dragged thing, right? Like giving it to the river, giving it to the waters, like letting it go so that the new stories and the new life ways can take its place from a place of self-trust. But it feels very cleansing to me. It feels like a moment where we just get a breath as we prepare for the change that's underway to take hold. It's not a bracing, it's an allowing. And so I think that if I were to recommend a ritual, I've been thinking a lot about ritual baths, like ritual bathing. And whether you do that in a north running stream, whether you do that with some boiled herbs, I will give I'm going to give a recommendation for a ritual that I do, a cleansing bath kind of ritual on Substack. But like to be with the waters ritually in a way that allows for things to move. And I think it's beautiful, this thing that came up about facing the west, because the west is where the waters are and come from, and at least in the medicine wheel that I've been taught. And so there's a sense of like, may we welcome them in and let this move. And so it's occurring at 21 degrees of Cancer. And the double whammy beauty of both the Kazemi moment and a dignified moon, right? This is the one new moon of the year where Luna is in her home territory. The only other major lunation that this happens is on the full moon in Cancer, which will happen in winter in the northern hemisphere. So there's a beautiful, for the moon to be at home creates a certain level of ease, but also, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about how the moon as a memory carrier opens something when she's home. Like she's able to open into her nature as the memory carrier, as the lineage holder, as the kind of current of consciousness, of impressions that lives in all things. That all the water that is here on earth is the same water that's always been here. And so when we open into that, what do we remember about ourselves and the world? That memory is as ancient as it comes. So it almost feels as though the cleansing comes from that place, that opening into remember your origin, remember yourself as water, a river that runs back into the sea, to which we all return, right? This kind of circuit of energy that regenerates itself. I think of self-cleansing springs or bodies of water in the landscape. So, in some ways there's not much else to say about it. It's in the third decan. which corresponds to the Four of Cups. It's also, in some ways, a Jupiter-ruled decan. So, or moon, sometimes we see this too. I believe, moon formatively. So she's really in her home territory, right? This is the double whammy of like very, very lunar regeneration. And it's interesting because the Four of Cups is such a funny one to me. It's like we can look at it and see it as passivity, but there's also a way that I look at it of like not needing anything. And so it's this interesting balance between a healthy level of indifference and withdrawal emotionally. But it may, in some ways, it could also be seen as that healthy sense of dignity that's like, I'm here. I'm not being pulled by anything. It's so often interpreted as like, you're missing an opportunity. And it's like, but what if it's just that I don't need anything? Like I can just be fully present with the process that's underway. Depends. Like that's up to you to interpret for yourself, you know? But that'll be Tuesday morning. And I think just because of the cleansing element to the lunation, it's not aspecting anything major either, other than the like sun, moon, and Mercury all being very close together, which feels like cleansing of mind, body, and soul. I think that because of this cleansing on the eve before and then letting your sleep actually take the cleansing fully through your system the night before the moon could be nice, you know, like Sunday night or Monday night, doing a little ritual bath and then maybe offering it to the waters on new moon day or otherwise. So, you know, there's no wrong way to do it. It's all just about intention. And yet, here's a moment to embrace. So I'll leave it there. Enjoy the new moon and stay steady out there, my friends, amidst all of this churning. And we'll see you next week. Take good care.